society and have an adjustable life for you. Can you tell us that big step from prison to where you are now?
Not as simple as I would like to state it, but it is difficult. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen overnight if you have somebody with $1 million sitting there waiting for you to come out and handing it to you and saying, here, go have a life. It doesn't work that way. People take a long time to forgive. And the minute they hear, quote unquote, this man has just been out of prison, they're immediately afraid of him. And that goes for your neighbors, and that goes for potential employers or existing employers. I've had a lot of people that I have helped over the years that have had jobs that they did not tell their employers that they were ex-convicts, and the minute that their employers did find it, they found some excuse to get rid of them. This attitude on, quote-unquote, the free society does need to be changed, but that's only 50% of the battle. The majority of the battle with an ex-convict is within his mind. He has to adjust to the fact that he is getting into somebody else's ball game. He's trying to play by somebody else's rules that he has no experience with. And it's very difficult for him to look at himself and say, hey, stupid, you made a mistake. Pick up your marbles and go back and try again. So
you have to be awfully strong, though. Your character has to undergo a great change, wasn't it, for you to kind of withstand the pressures of society?
It was very difficult for me, but I did it. Thanks to EMI, I have never had any recourse to go back to my old ways, if that's what you're asking. I can't say that with my previous experiences getting out of prison, because I always fell back to my old ways. Many people getting out of prison now, not having an alternative method of existing in society, will go back to their old ways because they have no other choice. I had that choice, thanks to EMI.
All right. Do the people with whom you work know of your past record?
Some do and some don't.
Okay. Mr. MacDougald, you know, we were talking about John Doe's testimony, but we need more than that to change the figures of our crime rates in America. Did you bring any charts with you that will reflect how we stack up?
We have a chart. If incarceration rates per capita of the 50 states is presented on this chart, they will put on the screen, and you will see where Georgia stands in relation to the rest of the states. In Georgia, the crime rate, index crimes reported, have increased faster than the region and the nation since 1972. And when the crime rates go up, the need for prison space goes up. And by January of 1980, we had more people in prison than per capita than any other state in the United States.
Okay, we're the most, Georgia. Who's the least?
The least, let's see, the chart there, Georgia number 1 at 256.7. The national average is 138. You can see our border states are fairly high. But were the rate in Georgia reduced to the average of the border states, 2,940 prison beds would be freed. Now, Alabama, at 149.8 compared to our 256, reflects really the excellent probation work, prison work in Alabama. They're doing a good job. Now, John was talking about the difficulties of adjusting, and you picked up that the fact he did it was evidence of a strong character, a strong personality. You cannot identify whether the personality is strong and the character is good very quickly, but one way, and that is the use of sophisticated diagnostic psychometric testing. You can test and identify with about a 90% accuracy who can do it. And this EMI is fine. There are lots of fine character educations out there. But you've got to know when the character is educated. This takes a diagnostic, so it's you can't really use the character education without being able to tell when the character's been developed, and is the personality strong enough to use it and stick to it.
Dr. Stubbs, you participate with the program. Is everybody eligible to participate in it, you know, the offenders, or do you just really select certain people after you go?
Well, these arrangements have to be made now. And one of the current things, and it was true down years ago at the state prison, there's a tendency to try out your toughest cases. Well, some of these toughest guys, as John indicated, are the people who have capacity to be leaders if they're redirected. Now, the nice thing, I don't believe it's been mentioned yet, that this course is programmed in such a way that out of the first class you have, you can select 2 or 3 promising people as leaders for other classes so that you have a geometric progression. Now, this calls for a little oversimplification, but this is made up for by the way the people can illustrate the key points from their own life experience. But you have a chain ladder effect in any large institution by having people who have taken one class serve as leaders for the next.
John wants to say something. What do you want to say, John?
I wanted to shore up Dr. Stubbs' remark. I was one of the pilot instructors for this program in Reidsville. We had selected 9 of the toughest cons in Reidsville at the time to participate in the class. Within 3 days, we had 27, and they were volunteers. By the time we ended the first course, we had 7 instructors come out of that one program and over 50 students, participants.
Let me add
Go ahead.
something else, John. The word eligible got me to thinking about who would take the course. I think it's important to realize that there are some people who are not going to change, and that's why it's important to recognize which ones these are and be able to keep them in. There's some people that we don't have any way of dealing with except to keep them away from society, both for their own protection and society's protection.
And you determine that through the diagnostic?
And as Dan says, there's an 85 to 90% reliability of the testing that's done, and this will all now, in the new project that's coming up, be on a database, on a computerized basis, so that the total universe of people involved can be covered.
We've got a break in a minute, but we want to come back in a minute and talk about funding, because you made a very good point about that. You got to have money to run these programs. Mr. MacDougald and I have been joined now, Mr. Carl Schmidt. Mr. Schmidt, for 11 years, has been in the law enforcement world. For about 5 years, you were with the FBI, and about 6 years, you were a police officer. You've dealt with this whole thing of crime. What is your perception and opinion on the character building that we've been talking about throughout the program, and how they've been able to change the attitudes of offenders and maybe make them better for society? Do you subscribe to all these theories?
Yes, ma'am, wholeheartedly. I've done a lot of research myself on the program. I know how bad the situation is from being out there in it. I've not only worked as a regular uniformed police officer, but in narcotics, intelligence, and plainclothes undercover on the street. I know how bad it is. The research that I've done in the past was in reference to my PhD, and I tried to find out something that, or I wanted to study something that was socially relevant, something that was also relevant to my knowledge as a police officer. I went through all the records in Dougherty County, both probation records and the court records. I did some checks through the National Crime Information Center. And I took every person that had been through EMI from the period of January 1969 to December 1977. I took all the people that had been through EMI during that period and all the people that had not been assigned to EMI during that period, and I followed them for that 8-year period. I found out during that 8-year period that there was a 77% success ratio for those people that had been given EMI training. In other words, over that 8-year period, 77% of 814 people had never had another meaningful contact with law. The thing that didn't surprise me really that much, other than the fact that when I started, I really started out to prove that it didn't work, because I didn't think it did. After I get into it, the 77% really didn't surprise me that much. What really did surprise me was that my control group consisted of 753 people that had not had EMI training during the same period, arrested for the same type crimes. There was only a 4% success ratio for those people. So that means 96% of that 753 people were either reincarcerated or were in some way, recidivist.
Okay, now we're getting another testimony here, Mr. MacDougald, for the program. Now, it costs a lot of money.